With January setting in, I wanted to play some new Amiga games. But with the last paycheck being so long ago, and the next one being so far away, where was I to turn? Well, someone pointed me to a website, and it wasn't a Juarez one. No, it was ItchIO. And welcome to Goldfish on Games. ItchIO, for those who don't know, is an indie game store that operates on a pay-what-you-like system. Developers can set a minimum price, but for a large part of its catalogue, it's set to free. And it's those games that I want to check out. So unfortunately, games like Roguecraft or Seasonoid are out. But that does leave us with a decent number of interesting games to find. So let's start off with some original titles, like Dr. Dangerous, Secrets of the Temple of Xol'Tan. Developed by Who Games, it was released in 2024, which follows our hero, Dr. Dangerous, who got locked out by his own security system, which dropped him into the Temple of Xol'Tan, where they're going to have to collect batteries. This is very much a collect 'em up, but more in the platform puzzle box style, as this first level neatly demonstrates, as it guides you around the basics. And to help you along your way, you also have the Zapper, with limited ammo. To get around, you will have to press buttons to open up new areas, and then there's monsters that you'll either have to avoid or take out. Now this is a lovely looking game that has more of an early 2000s style to it, something that might look more at home on the GBA, as we have lots of animations and not just on our hero. Thankfully, you don't have to complete the game in a single go, as you will find these larger computers, and if you interact with them, they will give you a 3-digit password. And on top of that, they will also give you an extra life, and will do so every time you play the level. Now this is a lovely game with loads of levels and lots of puzzling for you to do, that seems to be pitched just right, with lots of traps and monsters for you to deal with. And if this or any of the other games that's going to be featured on today's episode looks interesting, then I'll leave links to their itchIO pages either in the description or as a pinned comment, so you can go check them out if you want. And if you think they're really good, then you can drop them a purchase. It's like the shareware days of old. Getting ready to put the fear in us is Capacitors Revenge. This is the most PD-like game that I've played. It really looks and feels like something I would have found on the cover discs each month. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It was developed by Pixel Plop and was released in 2022. The goal is a simple one: protect the processor from those evil components that are out to kill it. You do this by moving around the chip and firing along the pins, so in a way it's a bit of a reverse Tempest. The enemies will come in fast and in numbers, so you really have to be on the ball with shooting at them. But power surges will also come along every so often, and you'll have to make sure you're not in their way or boom, it's another quick death for you. It's a surprisingly frantic and fun little game, and they have done a great job with the controls, as you can quickly switch sides as well as move around all the pins to keep those shots flying out. The sounds are simple enough, but work with the game, and the graphics are very colourful. And for the most part, they don't clash with each other either. You can clearly see what's going on. This is one of those simple but well done little titles, and very in keeping with the spirit of the Amiga. An interesting little game is Bulb Master. That was developed by Neurofuturism in 2023, and at first blush it might look like a Sokoban game, and you'd be right, but it does have its own twist on the genre, as you have to push the light bulbs into the socket. The catch is that while the boxes will move one block at a time, the bulb will move until it hits something. So yes, it's a mix of the block pushing and sliding puzzle games in one. This means you have to move the blocks into the right place, so you can then move the bulb around. Graphically, it looks quite nice, and audio-wise, it has some music on the title screen, and then some basic sounds in-game. It's not breaking any new ground, but I did find it a fun little title. But this is one of the few games where it's breaking some of my self-imposed rules, and that was only to check out completed games. As what we get here is a demo, with a message saying the full thing will be out soon. That was a year ago. Now there are a lot of abandoned games on ItchIO that looked really promising, but then never got finished. And I get the feeling this might be one of them. So while the site is absolutely great, beware as the next promising title that you might play might never get finished. And another platformer that I found is The Lost Pixel. And yes, this is another collect-em-up puzzle game. I actually could have filled the entire video with just this style of game, but I decided just to pick a few of the best, and this was one of them. Made by Amiga Factory, it was released in 2024. The goal is obviously very simple. You have to collect all the pixels that you see. And yes, this level is Tetris. The game plays out against the backdrop of some classic games, in a lovely looking AGA game. This is very much in the spirit of the classic PD games. The game was built using the Red Pill engine, and is more of a game creator style system. But it seems to be powerful enough that it's made a range of titles. And it's nice to see developers picking up and trying to improve on the systems of old like Amos. It's also cool to see developers making physical versions of their game. And it seems that if you pledge a high enough amount, you can get a copy of the game on a disc in the mail. Something that the next game also does, Inca Man. And yes, it's another collect-em-up platformer, but this is of the single screen variety. It was developed by Ami10 Games and released in 2021. And the goal, again, is very simple. Collect all the gems, and then you can grab the key and then finally try and make it to the exit. All while doing that within the time limit. Getting hit by an enemy thankfully doesn't reset the level, but it will impact how much bonus points you get. which I think is a good compromise. And at first you'll just be trying to avoid the simple paths that the baddies take, but later ones they'll start to jump around as well, so the difficulty does ramp up quite nicely. And to help you out, there are also items to collect that might pause the baddies or give you more time. With the inclusion of the time limit, this feels like something that would have been released in the 90s. It might have been on a budget label, but I can see me playing a demo of this on a cover disc and thinking that it's a lot of fun, even if I might not have grabbed the full game afterwards. But that might be due to the fact that I've played quite a few of these collect 'em up style games for this video. It's not just original games on ItchIO. People have been busy at work trying to port games from other systems, like Metal Gear. This is a port of the original MSX2 game, and this was done by Hoffman, and it gives us a lot of options for how to run and play the game, as well as how it's been translated. But being a port of an MSX2 title, it does still look like that older 8-bit machine, but sound-wise it does have a great new soundtrack by DJ Hoffman himself. And if you've not experienced the first mission by Snake, then this could be a good place to start, as it's got all the sneaking around that the series is known for, but I will say the sneak 'em up genre isn't for me. I'd rather run in and not deal with subtlety. So of all the games that I've shown today, this isn't one that I'll actually put too much time into. But just due to how much time and effort has gone into this project, I just had to show it off. If we got a port like this back in the day, I think it would have done really well. But Konami at the time weren't exactly known for getting the best teams involved in their Amiga ports. So maybe we should be happy that it arrived late, but in such a good state. And amazingly, it's not just ports of older games. Take Luma. This was developed by Xol'Tan, and it was a port of the modern C64 game by Xol'Tan. And what we find is a puzzle game, and we all know I enjoy a good puzzle game, and this one is of the laser bouncing around genre. And in the first few levels we just have to move the batteries to the lasers to power them. But you only have a limited number of moves that you can do on each level. Now that might be to move the batteries, the laser emitters, or the reflectors. I really like that they didn't include time limits or lives. If you mess up, then you just get to go again, and again. It looks quite nice, and there's some atmospheric music playing in the background. This is a game that I spent ages playing, and it's the type of game I would have played back in the day. Whether it be PD or commercial, I think this would have done very well. Even if there were a number of similar but not quite the same games doing the rounds at the time. But I think the idea of moving the parts around rather than changing their direction is a cool one, and it works really well. So if this looks interesting, then also check out the original on the C64. And then there is Yump. Yes, the amazing modern C64 Atari 8-bit game has been brought to the Amiga by ZR Games and was released in December of 2024, so this is a new one. If you've not heard of Yump before, then you are the ball that has to bounce its way along this tube, all while making sure that you don't fall off. A simple sounding but challenging in practice game, as the shape of the tube will change, with opening and pits showing up, but there are some squares with extra abilities like long jumping, or more annoying like changing the brightness that will help or hinder you. You also have a jump that you can trigger at any time, but you are limited with how many you can use. So keep them handy for when you've messed up and you need that extra bit to keep yourself going. All while this very nice looking tunnel keeps pushing you forwards, as does that music. Even though it looks great and scales up nicely depending on the machine you have, it is a little bit too simple for a full release. But it also is a bit too good for a budget or PD release. This might have been a great mini game inside of a bigger title, a bit like how Stardust has the tunnel sections, which this really reminds me of. But at the same time, that feels a little reductive as this is so much fun on its own. But either way, I'm so happy that they've brought this to the Amiga, as it is a lovely title. There's also a number of games that are graphical upgrades of older Amiga titles, like Rick Dangerous, that has been remade from the ground up in the Scorpion engine by the Z team in 2022, which has used the fan remake for the Wii as the basis for its artwork. Now it does feel a bit odd not having that classical music on the title screen or in the cutscenes, but the original sound effects are present in the levels. Now, being a full-on remake rather than a direct upgrade, you will notice some differences, particularly in the controls, as Rick doesn't move quite as precisely as he used to. And I think he does move a little bit faster than before. So it did take me a bit of time to get used to the changes. I think the collision detection is also a bit too precise. But then Rick Dangerous was known for being a bit brutal at times. They have also changed how the controls work, where you used to hold down the fire button and then press up to shoot or down to place bombs. Now, just pressing the fire button will shoot the gun, pressing space or blue on the CD32 controller will place bombs, and I'm not sure they kept the stick at all, which was useful to trigger some of the traps, but maybe they removed that as well. But all the tricky platforming and instant deaths are here and ready to annoy you. Just in some glorious upgraded artwork. A very impressive project was Turrican II: The Final Fight AGA, which was done by Sonic Sloth and released in 2022. Now this is also based on a previous release, in this instance the 1995 DOS version of the game, that was redrawn in 256 colours. But they also made a few of their own changes to the artwork, like including the original Amiga sprite, rather than the weird looking one that was originally made for the DOS version. but they've also restored a few of the original effects that were missing from the DOS version, like the little pitter-patter of water on your head when you go through the waterfalls. But we have all the original music and sound effects, and it runs absolutely great. And for the 3 or so of you that don't know what Turrican II is, it's a run and gun style game where you have to explore these huge levels to make it to the exit. But there are bosses big and small to deal with, and lots of enemies. But thankfully there are also weapon upgrades to get, and you have quite the arsenal at hand. This is something that if they did it for the CD32 at the time, I think it would have been amazing, and it really would have helped show off that machine. As not only would it have made great use of the hardware, but also the controller. And it also would have made it the only direct port of the game to the consoles. And it would be remiss of me not to mention the library of games that the great Rob Smith dev has released. Now typically these are holiday themed, like the amazing Santa Present Drop 4, Grunch's Revenge, but these have all been incredibly well made games in Amos. And to be honest, they don't even need that festive dressing. These would have worked on their own and could easily have been sold back in the day, as this one plays a lot like Lemmings or Gulp, where you have to guide the elves to the exit using the drone. Now these elves are also relatively smart, so you don't have to guide them quite as much. You may have to tell them to jump into water, but you can point them at the direction that you want them to go and they'll try and make their way on their own. This is an incredibly inventive title that's a lot of fun and has a huge number of levels. So if you've not seen this or Rob Smith Dev's channel before, you should go check it out, as it's both great. And with that, we're at the end of the episode. ItchIO has some great games, and these have just been the free ones. Some of the paid for ones are absolutely amazing looking, so we might have to check out some of them in the future. And if there's any games that you think that I should have checked out, let me know in the comments, because I really enjoy finding new Amiga games to play, because people are getting really creative with the machine again, and it's great to see all these new titles coming to the classic machine. And if you're thinking about making a new game, could I please ask you not to make it another collect 'em up? And until next time, I was the Goldfish, that was some quality free games, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thanks for watching. The Amiga really is my favourite machine, and I do love checking out new titles on it. So if you enjoyed this, then you could give the old thumbs up, or if you hated it, then you can give me a thumbs down. Either way is engagement. Or if you really enjoyed this content, then you could try subscribing to the channel, as I release new videos all the time